Since we came across all of this junk, we wanted to get even more in depth with it, but what shocked us most is how many celebrities are talking about cloning, and don't worry, we will be getting into more of that later in the episode.
Also, one of the most spellbinding testimonials that we came across, nearly as gripping as Corey Goode's experience, is a man named Donald Marshall, who you probably never heard of, but if his story is true, then this will forever change the way we all view music today.
Ben and I spent an entire day watching videos and reading his entire site. Now, we have no way to prove any of this, so we're just going to present what Donald is saying, but there's a lot he says which does line up with what we know about the deep state, and that's why it's interesting to us.
However, there is a series of articles that came out on Steemit which break down his whole story and dig into whether they are true. The conclusion the author comes to is that Donald does seem to be telling the truth based on what he understands and knows.
We also reached out to Donald to see if we could interview him. His story is way out there, but there is some smoking gun evidence along with celebrities and scientists talking about this. So far we haven't heard back from him, so if any of you guys out there know him, let him know. We would love to have him on the show.
So who is Donald Marshall? Well, he is an Illuminati whistleblower who claims he has been cloned. Almost all of us have heard about the deep state's underground bases, in which insiders call deep underground military bases, or DUMBs for short.
DUMBs. I mean, they couldn't come up with a better acronym. Fitting for the cabal. But anyway, most of us all know about Dulce, New Mexico base, and our boy Donald talks about this a lot. His claim is that every night when he goes to sleep, as soon as he enters REM sleep, his consciousness is transferred to one of these bases and enters his clone body.
Now, Donald doesn't know exactly how they do this, but he says they call it REM-driven consciousness transfer. He said his consciousness is stolen from him and he wakes up in a clone body, and this happens every night no matter where he is in the world.
Also, according to Donald, all the Illuminadonkeys have clones too, and every night they all meet in their clone bodies at these bases. So what do? Well, do you really have to ask? Mostly sexual indulgence, torture, kill, rape, and every other despicable act there is to children and each other. He said his parents sold him as a child to get into the Illuminati group.
It is also known by many people that Michael Jackson was obsessed with cloning.
He made samples of his DNA to use for cloning, and according to a Telegraph article, he even went to a realism conference on cloning and was excited with the prospect of being cloned. He even said to his friend Uri Geller, quote, he grabbed Uri by both arms and told him, "I really want to do it, Uri, and I don't care how much it costs," unquote.
Another celebrity who came out is Tila Tequila, who has made videos on social media on how they cloned her to please the Illuminati's sexual desires. She has been speaking out against the Illuminati for a few years. However, it is hard to find anything on her now.
The last time she posted anything seems to be almost a year ago, but she does have a YouTube channel called Tornado Thien Wife of Christ, in which she mostly talks about her paintings and focuses on being a Christian. And when you go there, you won't even think it's her because physically she's changed a lot. She's gained a lot of weight and stuff, but actually we've confirmed, right?
Yeah,
you check
she has tattoos and
stuff.
everything. Yeah, and she has kids. I think now she's just like
doing her thing.
Yeah, she just wants to have a family. She doesn't care about,
the Illuminati.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The other celebrity who came out and even had a video with his so-called clone is Kid Buu. However, Donald has said that he's doing this for attention and a publicity stunt and isn't actually with his clone, but instead just using software to edit it. However, Kid Buu did have a live Periscope video with his clone, so I mean, it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. Another celebrity is Nicki Minaj, of course, who tweeted this out with the hashtag #StopHumanCloning. Also, many other people, such as female rapper Cree Sean, who tweeted out she has seen the cloning centers, Katy Perry, Miley Cyrus, ESPN host Chris Fowler, and many more.
Now, some of these could just be joking, but we wanted to include these because we honestly don't know. Also, Jared Goff, who plays for the NFL Rams, wore a jacket that said cloned on it during an interview. This is not a name of a company from what we could tell.
Another rap artist who came out is B.O.B., who we endearingly call Bob, who's also talking about Marshall and backing up his story. He even made a YouTube video talking about cloning and supported Donald Marshall's claims, saying all kinds of things actually started to happen to him once he started to speak out publicly about cloning.
Another celebrity mentioned is Britney Spears. Donald claimed that Britney willingly joined the Illuminati to be famous and then wanted out because of what they were doing to her. He said that they cloned a lot of her and were basically raping her clone body every night.
He said she was so tired of it that she decided to make a video exposing it in her song Break the Ice. The music video is an anime of Britney breaking into a cloning center and smashing all of the clone versions of herself.
Donald claims that the cloning centers look exactly like what is depicted in the video, with 2 tanks on top of each other in large rooms. He says it only takes about 5 months for a clone to be fully grown.
Donald also claims that he wrote that song along with most of Britney's other songs. He claims that Hit Me Baby One More Time is about himself getting beaten for not making songs.
Also, he said James Cameron's Avatar is actually based on real-life technology. He talks about a company, which is a real company, called 2045 Initiative. It focuses on life extension technology combined with Russian specialists in the field of neurointerfaces, robotics, or artificial organs and AI systems.
But let's now get into Donald's personal story and more with his music. Again, we're just presenting what we found, but there does seem to be evidence to back up at least some of what he says.
Donald says when he was 5 years old, they started to torture him and forced him to do things in his cloned body. Once that body was killed, he would then wake up in his real body feeling like his heart is going to explode and in great pain. Almost every night this happened to him.
However, his memory was actually suppressed until he turned about 30. He said for some reason the Illuminati decided to allow him to have his memories back.
The first time they didn't block his memory and brought him to the center, he thought he was abducted and brought into a different dimension. He said being in a clone body is exactly the same as being awake. But growing up, he said he never remembered his dreams. Then he realized it is because he didn't have any.
Donald said he even tried setting alarm clocks, taking drugs, drinking alcohol, even sleeping pills to force himself not to enter REM sleep. However, he claims nothing ever worked. And when he was drinking or on drugs, the clone body would feel the effects too. That's really weird.
It is super weird. He said he even tried to wrap his head in tinfoil, but they laughed at him and told him there was no way to block the transfer and that it was hopeless even to try. Now, what is interesting about this is that the University of California performed a study on mice using light to erase specific memories.
Yep, just like the real-life MIB flash thingy.
Well, technically it's called a neuralizer.
That's what I just said.
This actually has a real name. Well, not the neuralizer thingy, but in science they call it optogenetics. In a nutshell, this theory concerns how memories are formed and stored within the brain. And according to the study, neuroscientists believe that learning is processed within the cerebral cortex of the brain, but retrieved again through the hippocampus.
Hippo say what? Now, for those of you out there who have no idea what this means, like me, we can explain it in an example. The study said they placed mice in a cage and gave them electric shocks. They switched off specific nerve cells in the hippocampus of the mice, and they actually lost all memory of the trauma.
To make sure they did, they placed them in the same cage, and instead of showing signs of fear, they explored their new environment and seemed eager to find new things. This showed that it worked, and their memory was suppressed.
We also know through so many insiders and people coming forward that the Illuminati has had the ability to do this for a long time. So maybe this is a way to get soft disclosure out through the study of mice.
According to Marshall, they can erase or bring back memory at a push of a button. Also, we have talked a lot about the voice of God technology and other kinds of dark tech that would make all the world's people want to storm the Pentagon if it was revealed.
Or storm Area 51 like people are already planning to do.
Not Area 51.
I digress. Well, anyway, we had our guest Desiree, who's been a targeted individual, or TI. Now, Donald says that the 2 main leaders of the Clone Center were, or still are, none other than Vladimir Putin and the Queen Elizabeth, along with the entire royal family. Marshall said as his memories came back, he also started to recognize so many of his own family members, including parents, brothers, step-parents, etc.
He remembers being 5 years old and brought on stage surrounded by an auditorium full of people, with the center being a dirt pit. He said he was constantly raped and tortured, and to combat this, he started singing.
So you might be wondering why Donald hasn't been killed by the Illuminati, or why his life hasn't been threatened. Well, it's because they actually used him to write music. right? Well, this is where the story really begins, and hang in there because you're probably going to think it's actually too hard to believe. He said that when he was really young, Queen Elizabeth asked him if he could do anything, and from there, he actually started to sing. They liked what he sang so much that they recorded it and made a hit single out of it.
Soon he became known as the amazing boy who could make top 10 hit singles in no time. He said if he didn't, they would torture him, which is how he started to make music for everyone. And this started at 5 years old.
Yeah, and this is also the reason why they won't kill him, is because he's too valuable for them as a songwriter, right?
Exactly.
Okay. One piece of evidence that's basically like the smoking gun is the cover of Megadeth's 2001 album titled The World Needs a Hero. Wikipedia says that Dave Mustang is on the cover. However, Dave has obvious red hair, and Donald claims it was one of his clone bodies that's on the front after it was beaten.
Honestly, it does look a lot like him, and this was what made us want to dive into the story even more. He says the blood on his face is real, but the rest is just computer graphics. Now, we are just presenting what we found here and have no real way to verify this, but this is just the beginning of his story.
Yeah, according to Donald, nearly every top 50 song you hear on the radio was created by him. In one video, he explained that the Illumidonkey put these microchips in his clone body, which are connected to a speaker system. So all he needs to do is to think of drums, sounds, guitars, lyrics, etc., and it actually plays those sounds.
He said that he became such a phenomenon that everyone wants to meet him in the cloning center and get him to make music for him. He said even though he was young, he made music for everyone, including bands and groups of all genre, even heavy metal. Of course, he says while he made millions of dollars for everyone, he got nothing in return aside from not being tortured.